Okay, we're continuing with quotes from the Holy Grail of Wisdom, quotes by me, Pete Rogers, in alphabetical order. We're going to mostly do Shakespeare here, but I just got a couple quotes first from John Sr. He's a professor of English literature at a university, and he also had written about trying to restore Christian culture. So he talks a little bit about neoclassicism, which is really, think of that being the 1700s, and then the Romantics being the 1800s. The transitional figures being people like William Wordsworth, the English poet who went to France during the French Rev, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, sort of his friend, protege, if you will. And the idea that in neoclassicism, it was all reason. Reason is everything. The so-called Enlightenment, a term invented by, guys like Diderot and Voltaire, the philosophes, the atheists, who kind of claimed that they were better than the Christian way of doing things. And neoclassicism was to look back, classicism, to the ancient Greeks and Romans. However, there was sort of a failure of reason. The French Rev from 1789 to 1794. It was a disgrace, okay? In France, 50,000 heads on the floor in front of the guillotine, okay? That's pretty much of a failure. The failure of reason is right there, because if you don't have any God or religion, you don't have any natural rights, and the secular ruler becomes brutal and does evil things, okay? And they destroy beauty. They destroy all the good Catholic art and whatnot. But anyways, then came the Romantic movement, which in many ways was a look back to Christianity. And it declared that, you can't get the truth and significance from reason. You have to have affection. But affection alone, too, there's something missing. And then modernism sort of rejects both affection and reason and says life has no meaning. So modernism stinks as well. You're not going to beat Christianity. Christianity makes the best art, the best music, the best everything. Okay? So that's a little bit about how to picture the psychological effects of neoclassicism versus romanticism versus modern fake, so-called art, fake art. Okay, he says anyone at college, whether in the pure arts or sciences, will discover that they've made a quantum leap when they get even a small amount of cultural ground under them. They will grow up like an undernourished plant, suddenly fertilized and watered. I think that's true. Like people say, well, if you want to be a scientist, why bother reading classic literature about the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, etc. And I would say because it develops your mind, you become way more articulate. You see the course of mankind, intellectual development. The Greeks basically invented the capacity to reason and philosophize. It's kind of fascinating to read their ancient literature. Almost all other cultures in the ancient days, there's some brutal tyrant just saying, do what I say or I'll kick your butt, okay? And nothing happens. There's no intellectual progress in those cultures. Okay, so here's a couple of his opinions that I disagree with. He says, what is Christian culture? It is essentially the mass. That is not my opinion or anyone else's opinion or theory or a wish. That is a central fact of 2,000 years of history. I would totally agree with that. I would say if you look at Christianity, one of the great weaknesses of Christianity, if you look at the Roman Catholic Church, it's like they don't allow guys to be married. So they have the worst talent pool. I mean, the stupidest guy in the church is the priest at a Catholic ceremony. He's not the stupidest, but he's one of the stupid ones. And you get all these, pedophiles. You get all these alcoholics becoming priests. It's a place to hide from the real world. They should allow married men to be priests, and then you can have noble masculinity. You get the best priests, okay? But the Catholic Church doesn't want to fix itself because it's taken over by a bunch of scumbags and Antichrist, and that's why it can't fix itself, okay? And then Protestantism, you do have some, good men as Protestant pastors, but Protestantism, in comparison with Catholicism, is kind of stupid. Catholicism goes right back to Christ. Protestantism, it goes back to Martin Luther. Each Protestant branch was formed by a man, not by God, like the Roman Catholic Church, okay? And then they all go Bible, Bible, Bible. I'll do some book reviews later, but I just read a book on the Sermon on the Mount by a Protestant pastor, and there's a lot of problems with how they think. They're boring, okay? The vast majority of people are illiterate, okay? When I say illiterate, I mean like functional illiterates. They learned how to read, so to speak, grade school age, but they don't ever read anything, so they're essentially a functional illiterate. And what I'm trying to say is you're not going to unify a population based on reading when none of them read, okay? Let's be honest. Whereas Catholicism, you don't need to read. The Mass is in Latin. You look at the pictures on the wall and the statues and you get a couple parts of it. You enjoy the singing. Okay, seeing all your friends at church. That's a lot of Christian culture. And I went to a Catholic school. I have tons of friends that went to Catholic schools. I know very much about it. And it's not the Mass. He's wrong. It's all the social life, the activities. The Mass is part of it, but, the priest is kind of like the lowest part of the whole thing. Until you get good priests, you can never build up the Catholic Church again. And they don't want good priests, so you can't fix it. Okay, he says, literature is the ox of culture. It is the beast of burden. Without it, we have no means of bearing culture. And the reason why I'd say you can't do that and you can't make it work, and it might have worked in the past, is because when people had 10 kids, it's no big deal to send one of your sons to be a priest. But if you only have 1.5 kids, you don't want your boys becoming priests, okay? You want to have some grandchildren. So, it can't fix itself. Okay, he says, rhetoric makes truth effective. Yeah, rhetoric is an impact booster for communicating information. He says, this is just paraphrase, Orientalism like Buddhism is BS. Yeah, people think Oriental Eastern philosophies are cool until you start studying them. Then when you start studying them, you go, well, gee, it's kind of a joke. Yeah, they are, okay? They're not religions, they're philosophies. Buddha was a man. Confucius was a man. Those are not religions. They're not God. Jesus was God, okay? Christianity is a religion. There's a giant difference. Okay. All right, now the star of our talk today, our quotes, is William Shakespeare. He lived from 1564 to 1616. Okay, so the first question on William Shakespeare is, how come nobody knows almost anything about his life? And if you think about it, the answer becomes kind of obvious. There was persecution of Catholics. So he was a Catholic, and he kept it relatively hush-hush because he didn't want to get in trouble for that. All right, so there's the reason why we know nothing about the life of Shakespeare, but we know everything about the life of these other writers like Goethe and Schopenhauer and a lot of these other people. Okay, and we know a lot more about Don Quixote and Miguel Cervantes than we do about Shakespeare. Okay, first quote, the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that take. That's from the Lady Portia in the play Merchant of Venice. Okay, Goethe, by the way, thought Shakespeare was the best writer in the world. Goethe was the brilliant German writer. Okay, H.L. Mencken. All Shakespeare did was string together a bunch of well-known quotations. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, Raphael paints wisdom, Handel sings it, Phidias carves it, Shakespeare writes it, Wren builds it, like the cathedral, St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Columbus sails it, Luther preaches it, Watt mechanizes it. Watt made the steam engine, Phidias was the sculptor of ancient Greece, and Luther preaches it. Emerson was a Protestant pastor before he left the Unitarian ministry. And, Luther was a very entertaining speaker, but, man, I disagree with tons of things Luther said. He broke up Christendom. So though he is entertaining, and he's the most vituperative speaker the most vituperative religious writer or speaker that ever preached, according to Will Durant, and I'd agree with that. There's nobody like Luther, but he was a jerk, even though there was some reason for some of the things he said. Okay, next one here. Shakespeare's characters often say the same thing in many different ways, as if they're progressively working towards hitting the bullseye. Okay, Scott Kaiser, when he wrote a book about Shakespeare's wordcraft. Now, a couple quotes from Hamlet. Hamlet's father was also named Hamlet. Shakespeare's son was named Hamlet. A little more than kin and a little less than kind regarding Claudius. Queen, thou know'st 'tis common, all lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. Hamlet, aye, madam, it is common. Queen, well, if it be common, why seems it so particular with thee? Hamlet, seems, madam. Nay, it is. I know not seems. Yeah, he's pissed off. His mom's fooling around with some other guy and his dad just died. What the hell is that? 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye, nor the dejected haviour of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief, that can denote me truly. These indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play, but I have that within which passes show, these but the trappings and the suits of woe. Yeah, he's sad. He loved his father. His father was a great man. Okay. So that's part of what's so strong about his language. He has absolute confidence in what he's saying, okay? Shakespeare continues from Hamlet. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. that it should come to this. But 2 months dead, my father, nay, not so much, not 2, so excellent a king, that was to this Hyperion, to a satyr. Let me not think on it. Frailty, thy name is woman. O God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, ere yet the salt of the most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eyes, she married. O most wicked speed! Indeed, my lord, Horatio, his friend, says, indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon. Horatio, Hamlet, methinks I see my father. Horatio, where, my lord? Hamlet, in my mind's eye. Horatio, what looked he frowningly about the ghost? Hamlet, a countenance more in sorrow than in anger. He's describing when he saw his father's ghost. And he talked about some custom. It is more honored in the breach than in the observance. Oh, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. The ghost speaks. I am thy father's spirit. Revenge his foul and most unnatural murder. 'Tis given out that sleeping in my orchard a serpent stung me. So the whole ear of Denmark is by a forfeit process of my death rankly abused. But know thou, noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. Hamlet, O my prophetic soul. My uncle, my fate cries out. O villain, villain, smiling, damned villain, that one may smile and be a villain. Well, does that sound familiar at the high-fat phonies? Hamlet, Horatio, O day and night, but this is wondrous strange. And therefore, as a stranger, give it welcome. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. The time is out of joint. O cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. Polonius speaks of Hamlet. He says, though this be madness, there is a method in it. Hamlet, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Hamlet speaking to Rosencrantz and Guildensterns. You were sent for, and there is a kind of confession in your looks, which your modesties have not craft enough to color. I know the good king and queen have sent for you. Hamlet, soliloquy. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties and form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, no, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. Okay, Hamlet. I am but mad north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. Hamlet. If you use every man after his desert, who shall escape a whipping? Use them after your own honor and dignity. The less they deserve, the more merit is in your bounty. Take them in. And then he's contemplating how he's such a wimp in revenging his father. He says, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. And he's watching the play and seeing how the characters act with so much emotion while he feels like himself that he's wimping out. And he says, is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage waned, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing, for Hecuba. What is he to Hecuba, or she to him, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and the cure for passion that I have? He would drown the stage with tears, and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty, and appall the free. The devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Hamlet thinking about the ghost. Well, the play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. Okay, that's it for this session of quotes. Hope you found those helpful.